Hello and welcome to our August Index webinar. I am Kent McDill, Senior Writer here at Spectrem Group, and with me is Senior Consultant Kathy Dordick. Our topics today are the highlights from the Spectrem Investor Confidence Indices for July, as well as our upcoming white paper on cybersecurity. I will begin with a discussion of the Confidence Index, which for July was flat, following a trend that has existed now for almost 3 months. While the economy appears to be rolling along quite well, investors do pay attention to issues which affect the stock market, and the global economy is a major factor for almost all U.S. companies these days. The continued conversations and arguments regarding tariffs on imports and exports to China, Russia, the European Union, Mexico, and Canada continue to weigh on the minds of investors who simply can't decide which way the wind is going to blow. The Spectrem Affluent Investor Confidence Index stayed the same from June to July at 3. The SAICI reflects the confidence of investors with $500,000 in investable assets. The Spectrem Millionaire Investor Confidence Index, which reflects the confidence of investors with $1 million in investable assets, rose 1 point to 8. There's been virtually no upward movement of the indices since February, when the Millionaire Index was at 18 and the Affluent Index was at 12. There was absolutely no increase of investing in stocks, mutual funds, bonds, or real estate from June to July. The one notable increase was among millionaires who increased their stated interest in investing in cash, which is seen as a safe product to invest in when times are uncertain. The Spectrum Household Outlook measure also took another turn downward in July to an overall rate of 22.9, which is the lowest mark in 13 months. The Household Outlook measures the outlook of investors on 4 factors which impact their daily financial lives. The only measure which saw an improved outlook was for household income, and when segmented, that rise came from an improved income outlook for female investors. The drop in company health by 4.4 points, the largest drop among the 4 factors, may be an indication of how companies are now being affected by tariffs applied by the U.S. against foreign countries. Every month, we ask one question about current events, and in July, we asked investors what major change they had planned to take over the next 12 months to improve their financial well-being. And as this chart shows, the most popular choice was no change at all. This again probably reflects the uncertainty investors have about what's going to happen in the global economy. We have the same charts here reflecting the interest of millionaires versus affluent investors and retired versus non-retired. As you can see, the retired investors are far more likely to be holding still with their financial decisions at this point. I will now turn this over to Kathy Dordick to discuss our white paper on cybersecurity.
Thank you, Kent. So this survey was fielded in mid-June through an online panel of affluent investors in the United States, and respondents had to have at least $100,000 in net worth, all the way on up through $25 million. So what we're finding is that investors are largely uncertain if personal information can be kept safe. As you can see from the chart, individuals in the occupation of information technology have the greatest confidence of those in different occupational segments in terms of confidence. And when we're looking at age ranges, millennials have the most confidence that their online accounts are safe, as they've grown up their entire lives with online access and digital accessing. Now, investors are moderately concerned about their level of safety in personal data for cyber threats. As you can see, again, the trend continues where individuals in information technology are the least of the segments that are concerned about that. They exhibit a very similar attitude to what they believe their advisor is able to provide in terms of protection for them for that cyber data or financial data from cyber threats. So that leads us to also, we wanted to look at how many investors were familiar with two-step authentication, the process of which 2 pieces of evidence or identification are used before the user is granted access, such as an ATM card and the accompanying PIN number. 2/3 of investors are familiar with that process, and 3/4 of investors believe that that process makes the information safer. Of those who are familiar, you can see when they feel they've been required to perform that two-step authentication. Also looking at what they would do if their accounts were to be compromised, almost 2/3 of investors would consider moving their accounts from their advisor. So overall, they have little confidence that their information is completely safe and secure, but 2/3 of investors would contemplate moving their accounts to a different advisor or provider if their accounts were to be hacked. I'm going to pass it over to Kent to discuss our High Net Worth Insights newsletter.
I want to also make you aware that the white paper on cybersecurity is available at our website at spectrem.com, as well as all of our other wealth segment reporting. Also like to encourage you to consider a subscription to the High Net Worth newsletter, which includes articles regarding our research as well as details on the Spectrem Confidence Index we discussed earlier. Thank you very much for listening, and hope to speak to you again in September.